Let's get an international take on our top stories this morning. Patrick Tsang is the chairman of the Tsangs Group. It's a family office based in Hong Kong, but for the past few years with an office here in Dubai, in DIFC as well. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning, Richard, Brandy.
Good to have you with us in the studio this morning. Let's start with the United States. Lots of tariff activity over the weekend. You spent the past 2 or 3 months in the United States exploring investment opportunities, making investments. How are you reading it?
Since Trump got re-elected in November, I was actually in Dubai and made a very quick decision that the U.S. is back for business. The last 2 months I've been in New York predominantly, and what I found is a lot of noise is in this tariffs, but actually people in the U.S. just get on with it, whether it's an investment, business, or even working. So every 2 days in the media and the newspapers and so on, you see a lot of changes, a lot of noise, but the stock markets are still rallying, tariffs are still very uncertain, but still very bullish about American opportunities.
Yeah, so you're still buying, you're still a buyer of American stocks even at these levels, with the Nasdaq at a record high, the S&P 500 at a record high, Nvidia at $4 billion. Why are you still buying when some say, no, overvalued?
I can see that why people say it's overvalued, but also I'm also a great fan of the U.S. economy, the innovation, creativity. It's still number one in the world. Crypto is at an all-time high, with Bitcoin, Nasdaq, all these companies, and I'm still very bullish on AI specifically. And the U.S. and China will be the predominant leaders in the space, and this will continue.
So how do you play the AI story? Just buy shares of Nvidia and go away? More nuanced than that, I would imagine.
I think for the general investor, yes, I think that's the short answer. I believe that most of the deals globally, I think it's something like 53% of all the AI deals come from San Francisco, not even Silicon Valley of the US. 33% is China, the rest of the world's Japan, Taiwan, Germany. And China and US will dominate the space for the next 5-10 years.
So you buy shares of these companies?
For most people, that's your only access. I think even people like myself who have good access, even we do not get the direct access to all the top AI deals. They're all signed before you even leave the room.
Okay, let's talk about some of the other investments that you're making at the moment, or some of the other issues impact your investments. You were here 8 months ago, because I was looking back on LinkedIn, to launch your book, The Global Citizen. And a more badly timed book, if I may make so bold, I cannot think of. You published The Global Citizen in late 2024. Donald Trump comes back to the White House and rips up the globalization order. Discuss. I
think it's more interesting. I think Donald Trump, a lot of people like him, some people don't like him. I personally am in support of how he's shaking things up, and that creates a lot of opportunities. Art of War always mentions where there's chaos, there's opportunity. So for people like us, there's always great opportunity. It's traumatic for some people, but if you play your cards right, you can actually make a lot of money in the next 4 years.
Let's talk about this region. You opened your family office here during COVID, so you've had several years of being based here in the UAE. You're active in Abu Dhabi, and I saw a recent LinkedIn post by you saying that Saudi-China ties are going to take a, quote, quantum leap. Why?
I think just in the region, China, because of the tariffs, actually, part of the reason is China needs to have other partners apart from the U.S. I think the decoupling of U.S.-China will be much more difficult than what people think because they're so reliant on each other. But obviously, China wants to mitigate such risk. And, the biggest, most happening and exciting area right now is either the Southeast Asia, but more important is Middle East. So Middle East obviously have strategic reasons, but also the bankroll to do more business with China. So China wants to invest more time and money in the relationship. And obviously Saudi's one of the more influential players in the GCC.
When you're in China or when you're in Hong Kong talking with the Chinese business community or Chinese-speaking business community, where do you see the excitement for the Middle East? Do they talk about Saudi Arabia more? What questions are they asking you? Is it, Patrick, what's happening in Dubai? Patrick, what's happening in Abu Dhabi? Patrick, what's happening in Saudi Arabia? What's their first question?
I think the city that everyone talks about in China and Asia in general is Dubai. So very appropriate that we're here in Dubai. In terms of the country, I think Saudi seems to be a bit more attractive because of people thinking that there's more money to be made and to be discussed. So there's a lot of interest there. I think it still goes back to 1, 2, 3, 4 years, even since the last few times we've talked. I think even though there's a lot of interest, but there's still this cultural divide between culture and language, and it's a very close relationship between G to G, between UAE, Saudi, Qatar.
G to G, government to government.
Correct, G to G, government to government. But the normal entrepreneur or the business person in China wanting to access deals and business in the region is still very far away. And the only way to break down this barrier is to be the global citizen by coming more often. And it's just through dialogue, conversation, sitting down, having tea, food, breaking bread, and then becoming friends. And that's something that's very similar between the Chinese and the Arab culture. And once you become friends, then there's maybe an opportunity to do business.
We had flights between Dubai and Shenzhen launched just about 10 days ago. Big delegation from both countries were there, talking up the significance of this, and Shenzhen being the tech hub of China. Talk me through that dynamic.
So Shenzhen was a fishing village for over 40 years ago. It's caught up. The story is very similar to Dubai. It was just a fishing village. Here it was just a desert, and in 40 years, it's transformed into metropolis that is multinational. All the big tech companies from Huawei, Tencent, they're all there.
Why?
It's just a fishing village which is next to Hong Kong. It's got good weather, great access. It's got a few airports. It's now part of a region called the Greater Bay Area, which is one of Xi Jinping's babies. It's 130 million people, 13 major cities. I think there's like 20 airports, and it's the wealthiest region in the world, and it wants to become the China Bay Area, and it's going to be the Silicon Valley of China.
Okay, you've answered the question of why. Finally, before we let you go, Patrick, Hong Kong, which has had a challenging few years, let's be honest, as a major global trading entrepot. I said to you, is Hong Kong back? And you said, not quite back, but it's better. Explain your thinking.
So since we last talked in the last 3-4 months, one of the major changes is the IPO activity in Hong Kong has definitely improved. So there's a lot of investors, a lot more noise, a lot of Chinese IPOs coming. And I believe that a lot of the money coming in is actually not from China, but actually from the US, from a lot of US investors. They see an opportunity that some of these IPOs or companies are undervalued, which is very different to the overvalue that you mentioned in the US.
What kind of valuations are we talking about? I'm sure, you have crunched the numbers. You do crunch the numbers.
And the numbers have, the Hang Seng Index has gone up. There's a lot more activity from all the major banks from the US and China into the latest IPOs. There's a lot of IPOs coming up from regarding bubble tea and different things. I think there's
Labubus.
Yeah, and Labubus. And it's just things that you cannot really predict, which is quite interesting.
Patrick, always good talking to you. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for joining us in the studio. The thoughts of Patrick Tsang there, chairman of the Tsangs Group. You're listening to the Business Breakfast Dubai I 103.8 FM. Join the